Hey, what is up everyone? Pocket here and welcome back. In this video, we are covering week 4 of Dragonflight Season 4 of my attempt to go for the 0.1% Mythic Plus title on a Holy Paladin. Now, I've never gotten title before, and the highest I've ever been is around 3k IO in the past season, so this is definitely a challenge, and I'm trying to see if it's possible for an average person like myself to get the title, especially playing the worst healer in the current season. And if you're enjoying the series and you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. And if you already have, thank you so much for coming back and continuing to watch. And with that, let's continue our journey on the road to title. Alright guys, so going into this week, the affixes that we are going to be dealing with are Fortified, Afflicted, and Raging. And I feel like every single week has the absolute worst affixes, and I think that just comes down to just affixes being bad in general. But there is nothing that I hate more than Afflicted and Incorporeals. And then we're also going into the week with a 518 item level and a Mythic Plus rating score of 2917. And I feel like the goal this week is to hit 3k. And we're starting off the week, as always, by opening up our juicy vault. And we're really still looking for is that head slot. We are still running last season's headpiece, which is really holding us back as far as the item level goes, stats, and also the helm enchant, because the helm enchant is affected by the item level that it's enchanted to. So if we want our helmet to be better, then we gotta get a better one. No helmet, so we are gonna opt into getting the 522 Myth Track gloves, which is still good. It's still an upgrade, but I really could have used that helm. And we are starting back over with the Dragon Isles weekly quest for our Spark, but to be honest with you, we don't need any more crafted items, so I don't think we're gonna end up doing any of this. And to start off the week, just to kind of get our feet underneath us, to feel it out, we're jumping into a plus 12 Azure Vault, completely pugs, so we'll see how it goes. I've always found that the first day of doing keys seems to always be the worst. I don't know if it's because people just don't have the gear for that week, or if it's because we're figuring out the affixes, but the first keys are always the worst. And then most of our progress is usually made on like the last day. But if you bring along 2 really good DPS on top of an augmentation evoker, you delete the fortified packs like you're in a plus 5. So far this went really well for this first pull. And I'm just gonna come right out and say it right now. Afflicted is not a healer mechanic. Now some of you might completely disagree with me, but that's fine. Is it very convenient for your healer to dispel the afflicted? Yes, absolutely. But at the end of the day, guys, the goal is to get through the dungeon as a team, and if you refuse to take a dispel or a cleanse or whatever to get rid of afflicted, you're just playing for yourself, you're not playing for the team, and you should probably rethink about how you're playing. So should your healer be getting the afflicted? Yes, absolutely. But if you are playing a class that has one of these, make sure that you are taking it to help your team. That way you can get the afflicted that your healer might not see. And I don't know about you guys, but I ran into many pug groups this week with players who refused to either just dispel in general or to even run the talent that allows you to do it, and they were zero help. Those are the kind of people you do not want to play with. But with 2 evokers and a paladin, we had no issues with any of the dispels, and we missed some percentage somewhere, but not a problem. We just came back, killed some ads, and we managed to +2 this plus 12 Azure Vault right at the beginning, very first key, so that's a great way to start the week. But only giving us a measly 8 points, and I feel like at this point that's about all the progresses we're gonna make, is just small little increments at a time. The days of getting 50 points in one dungeon I think are over. But as always, your good luck doesn't last very long, especially when you're running pugs. We are almost 3 minutes into this key. There was a kick that was missed that ended up killing a few of the players. We have 4 deaths, and the tank just said nah. He just left the group and then ran for the entrance. I think in every video so far I've gone on a little rant about people leaving the key early, so let's just get it out of the way right here. If it looks like you're not going to time the key, that's fine, you know, call it as a team, be like, hey guys, it's not going to work out, we're probably not going to time the key, we should probably just call it here. Because at the end of the day, if you're doing anything above a +10, you don't get anything out of it. You don't get score, even if you miss it by 1 second if you're doing a +10 or above. So if you're doing a +12 like this one, there's no point in staying. However, we are 2 minutes into the key, 1 mistake was made, and this guy already says, I'm out. And people ask me in my streams why I sit in a queue waiting longer when like a good looking person from the Ragnaros server queues up. That's why. He was from the Ragnaros realm as a tank, and you can almost guarantee that they're gonna leave early if 1 mistake is made. So that's just me. I'm just really frustrated at all this. So what do you guys think? Do you think Blizzard should do something in specific cases like this where someone leaves within 3 minutes of a dungeon? I feel like behavior like this has plagued the Mythic Plus scene for a while now, and I'm not sure what you could do about it and how you can track it, but I think something needs to be done about it. And again, there is a difference between coming to a group understanding of not being able to time a key and then this. All right, rant over, we're done. So moving on, we're going into a +13 Uldamon, which I think is the worst dungeon of all time. Whether it's a fortified week or a tyrannical week, everything about this dungeon is just terrible. It has 5 bosses, it's super long, and it's just not enjoyable. But we do have a complete team, everyone in the group, we're all in Discord, we've all played together, and this should go pretty smooth. And things are going decent. It wasn't the best, but it also wasn't the worst. But I feel like anytime you get to this boss, this is really the make it or break it, which is really unfortunate because he's the last boss. But I think he takes the crown for the worst or hardest boss in any of the dungeons. And we get to him with 6 minutes remaining, and that's more than enough time to kill him. He's like a 2 or 3 minute boss, especially on like a fortified week. But even on a fortified week, he does hit pretty hard. So unfortunately, I was unable to keep my team up, and I let 2 of them die, and we're actually not going to time it here. So I tried to battle res, and it just doesn't work out. And I know this might sound crazy, but I did not know that the dot that goes out that you can dispel can also be dispelled by using Blessing of Freedom. And same goes for the Curse of Stone that goes out earlier in the dungeon from the ads. So at this point in time, I didn't know that. It's a big help later on, but any ability that gets rid of movement impaired effects will get rid of time sync, which is that dot that you get on this fight. And it does a lot of damage, so it's a huge benefit to get rid of that dot. So it definitely feels bad when you get a whole team together and you still can't time the dungeon. But that's gonna happen. There's gonna be plenty of times where you don't time the dungeon, but hopefully you learn something from it and you can always get better. And now knowing that Blessing of Freedom does remove that, this boss becomes easier. Still not my favorite, but in the future, I've done this boss a few more times and it's a lot easier. So going into day 2 of week 4, we do end up jumping into raid again, and of course we're on Razageth, and you can only kill this boss if it's just your tanks left, because that's kind of how it works. So we end up taking the boss down, and the only thing that I need out of this raid is that tempo stone so I can get a new helm. And thankfully we do win the need roll on the awakened tempo stone, which is allow us to replace my helm slot, and everything's just gonna get better from here. That has been the one piece of gear that has been holding me back for the last 3.5 weeks. So we get out of raid and immediately head over to the vendor so we can pick up that sweet, juicy new helmet. And we're also gonna upgrade it a couple times because we have plenty of crests and flight stones for it. And then don't forget to add the helm enchant. So afterwards we end up plugging into this +12 Algathar, and already it's not going very well. We had a wipe earlier because the tank fell over on a trash pack, which ended up killing everybody, and then we had some other deaths here and there. But the tank is going to go for the 3-pack pull right here, and this pull isn't that hard if you have a Demon Hunter tank. And to be honest with you, it has nothing to do with the survivability and everything to do with just having the sigils to be able to stop everything from going off. And with the Raging Week as well, you're not going to be able to stop the abilities from casting underneath 30% because, you know, Raging. But we are unable to get all the stops out. The group wipes here, and that's it for the dungeon. So my advice, just pull 2 groups at a time. It's not a big deal. I know you're not going to look as cool if you don't pull all 3, but you might as well just pull the 2, time the dungeon, rather than wiping. So the group does agree just to call it there because we're not going to end up timing the dungeon. So we end up in another Algothar. This one's a plus 13. We're actually making decent time. It wasn't the perfect group, but we're gonna time it. We have 7 minutes to the last boss and the last trash, which is plenty of time. However, the tank had a different plan in mind for us. And looking back on this, it's funny to laugh at, but I'm not gonna lie, guys, I got a little frustrated during this whole thing. Because if you're gonna make time, there's no reason why you do such a ridiculous pull. Is this pull doable? Yeah, sure, it is. If you're in a group that's coordinating, you can get the stops, you can rotate the cooldowns, stuff like that. And even in a pug, you could probably do this as well. But the likelihood of succeeding in this pull is probably a lot less than failing. We would have been just fine doing the normal splitting this into 2 packs kind of a thing. And not to mention as well, I am the only person in here other than the tank that can dispel these affixes. So that's never a good thing. But the tank is obviously busy doing some other things at this point than having the time to dispel. And I just think this goes back to what we just talked about, which is just take it slow. There's no need to do this. Maybe if we were even shorter on time, sure, but guys, come on. And I'm not going to show it, but after that, we spent the next 3 minutes chain dying constantly over and over again as we tried to run back and then died and tried to run back and died. So naturally, we do not end up timing the key once again. This dungeon has been evading me all week long. Every time I get into this group for an Alcathar, something always goes wrong. It's been rough. And this is, in my opinion, one of the easier dungeons, if not the easiest. But to move on to something a little more positive, we end up queuing up my key for a plus 12 Halls of Infusion. And I was sitting in queue for quite a while looking for a decent tank to come along on the key, because obviously you want a good tank. And I had this warrior queue up, and I think he was around 3k, maybe less IO score. But you know, he's not a demon hunter, so are we gonna take him? And there were some demon hunters that were signing up for the key, however, they just didn't look ideal. They didn't have the keys timed that made them look like they had the experience. You know how it is. And this warrior looked like he was the most experienced tank that was queuing up for my key. And I have yet to run a single dungeon with a warrior this entire season. All I know is they are C tier, just like me. So I gave it some thought. I waited around to see if I could get, you know, a meta demon hunter to come in and tank the key. No one was signing up, so I just thought, screw it. It's only a plus 12. Guys, you don't need a meta composition for a plus 12. Plus, how hypocritical of myself to not invite the off-meta tank when I am playing not only an off-meta healer, but the worst one. So we gave it a shot. We invited the tank, and we're going to see how it goes. So we get to the first boss. We still have 0 deaths. We have excellent damage from the Shadow Priest and the Paladin, and we are making excellent time. We get to the frog boss, still 0 deaths on the timer, and once again still making excellent time. And the boss was a little bit difficult because we didn't have, like, you know, a druid healer using vortex to suck in all the adds, or a demon hunter to grip them all in as well, but again, we managed to get through. We get to the third boss, and still no deaths, but we get put into an interesting position here. The boss is inside of the iceberg. Where do we stand? At this point, I am just hoping and praying. And somehow we lose 1 person. So we do get 1 death, not a big deal. We're gonna get the battle res up on him, but that doesn't really count. The boss glitched or something. I don't know what he was doing, but I've never seen that before. We're not gonna count that death. So after the 300 plus K HPS and the sweat that it takes to heal through this boss, we do end up killing her without any other deaths other than the one that we're not counting. And at this point, I think you guys can see where we're going with this key. We did have some issues on the bridge because, you know, on a fortified week, that little ad is pretty much a boss in themselves. But we ended up timing the key with a warrior as our tank. Guys, I just really think it goes to show that you don't need the meta comp when you're doing keys at this level. If you're pushing 17s, 18s, 19s, sure. I agree with you. You probably want to take the meta. However, at this level, even up to a 15, 16, I don't think you need it. I would rather take a more skilled player over a not very good player playing a meta spec. So just keep that in mind when you're in queue for your key and you see a holy paladin named Pocket Heal sign up. You should probably take them. They're probably pretty good. Because I'm sure you have all bricked some keys with a demon hunter tank and a resto druid healer. Am I wrong? And I did just have to throw in this failure real quick because once again, we're in a plus 13 Algathar and this key just continues to evade us. We do not manage to time it, and I think we're only over by a minute after this boss goes down. So I don't know why we are having the hardest time timing this dungeon. So now we're moving into a plus 14 Halls of Infusion. We do have half of our team here. We got our tank, we got Normie and Raquel, and we do have a Pug Augmentation Evoker this time. And I think this goes without saying, and it's pretty obvious. If you look at all the highest keys timed as a Holy Paladin, or even in general, they all have Augmentation Evokers in them. And so whenever we're doing these higher keys, we've kind of decided that we're gonna do our best to take Augs. And at the end of the day, it is a minor DPS loss to take an augmentation, but it obviously increases your survivability by a ton. And when we're out here timing the keys, we're not just barely missing the key by a couple seconds. We're usually a minute or more, 2 minutes above timing the key. So having a little DPS loss for survivability is not that big of a problem. And it's kind of unfortunate that there's one specific class, Augmentation, that is almost required in these dungeons. And looking at the class composition now, this is really as good as it gets. We've run with Augmentations in the past, and I remember them going alright. Like, I don't remember them being superior than other dungeons, but this dungeon here is kind of the one that made us think, hey, like, we really gotta start taking Augs. Because this was one of the smoothest dungeons ever. This is also the highest key that we've done so far, which is the plus 14. And when I say it was going smooth, like even here, we're on the third boss. I'm scared of this boss, guys. Every time we get to this boss, I always gotta like wipe my hands off. I gotta take a breath. But having the Aug here, we are pushing up over 400k HPS during this fight, and I felt like it was actually really easy. Okay, not really easy, but it definitely did feel easier than any of the other times I've done it. And that's how the whole key went. We got to the very end, we timed the dungeon, 2 minutes, 49 seconds to spare, 0 deaths, and we got 14 points out of it. That is the highest key that we've timed up to this point. And this is kind of when Raquel and I were like, look, I think if you're going to be playing this C tier healer, we're going to have to take an augmentation anytime we want to push these keys. So it's kind of the direction and what we're leaning towards. But that's going to bring us up to a total score of 2985 at this point. And after you time a key like that, you're feeling really good. So of course you're going to keep going, and we're going to jump into the plus 15 Algathar. And once again, this is the key that we cannot time this week. We haven't timed a single one. But we have the same team. Everyone in here knows exactly what they're doing. It should be pretty easy. Also, let's go ahead and just take a quick look over the DPS meters and see Normie over there pushing 6 million DPS with a rain of fire. And then anytime we run this dungeon, I always bop him. So he dies there, and that's kind of the lesson learned, is he needs a blessing of protection. But what's fun to laugh at, even though he died, missed half the fight, ran back, and then started doing a little bit more damage, he was still the #1 DPS. Just goes to show how strong Destro Warlock is on large pack pulls like that. So we do have some rough spots throughout the entire dungeon that's not going very well, and we get here with 3 minutes, 30 seconds left, and we're like, guys, if we're gonna time this, we gotta pull all this trash into boss. So that's exactly what we do. And so far, every time that we've done one of these where we're trying to time the key, we're really low, and we just gotta send it, does not go very well. But these ads aren't that hard, the boss isn't that hard, and we are determined to get this dungeon timed. So we do it, we send it, we pull all these ads into boss. And yeah, it went super well. So what do you do when you brick your plus 15 Algathar? You find a new augmentation evoker and you run it back on the plus 14. And we're on the last boss with 2 minutes to spare. What could go wrong? Oh right, we actually don't have enough percentage, so we have to run back out. It's okay though, should be fine. We just gotta pull one pack out here. These guys aren't that hard, like we said before, and this should be it. And there it is, guys. We do end up timing the plus 14, bringing us up to 3003 Mythic Plus score. So there it is. We make it to 3K on week 4. I mean, our goal was kind of to get it on week 3, but you know, playing a C tier healer, we made it to week 4, which is good. That's acceptable. So after that, we keep it going. We end up in a plus 14 Neltharis, And we do end up timing this dungeon as well, giving us a whopping 20 points, bringing us up to 3,023. And after that, we do head over to a plus 13 Uldaman. We do lose Normie, but we end up picking up a Pug Ret Paladin. And again, this key goes pretty decent. We have 9 deaths, but we end up timing the 13. And that is going to give us a total of 20 points, bringing us up to 3,043. And at this point, we are on a roll. Now this brings us to the last key of the week. Here we are in a plus 14 Azure Vault. We are making amazing time. We have 7 minutes, 23 seconds to go with just the last boss. And it's a fortified week, so he's not as hard as it would be obviously on a tyrannical week, because sometimes breaking those brittle shards or whatever they're called can be very difficult. So we go for the wall strat here. We have the tank stand up on the side. The reason why we're doing that is when the boss spawns all the crystals, they're super grouped together and it's easier to DPS them all down. So we do lose the Paladin as a orb slowly rolls into him and one-shots him, which is very unfortunate, but that's fine. We have a battle res, we get him up, and we still have another battle res to go. And sometimes this positioning can be a little tricky for melee, but keep in mind it's a Paladin. They have an extra 8 yards, so you don't actually have to be directly underneath the boss. And I myself am having no issue actually hitting the boss. So all the shards are spawned, they're all nice and grouped together, which makes it very easy to hit them all down. And the first pack goes really well. We do have Lust on top of it as well, so makes it very easy to break those down without any issues. Now, I think at this point it would be a good idea for the tank to just take the boss somewhere else, because we do have the orbs here, which probably is what we should have done, but we didn't, and that's going to cause us some problems coming up here. Now at this point there is a massive amount of orbs right underneath the boss, right next to all the crystals, making it kind of hard to DPS them down. But again, the Paladin should have plenty of range to hit the shards without any issues. So there's one shard, unfortunately, that does not get destroyed. And letting one get off is pretty much a wipe. It's a lot of damage that goes out, so if you can pop any defensives, you definitely should. I popped Bubble, I sacked somebody, so that's hopefully keeping enough damage off those people. We do end up losing Raquel, not a big deal. We still have another battle res. We're going to get him up, and it's going to be fine. But unfortunately, during the last destruction, everyone's taken a ton of damage. I'm low on cooldowns, and I'm so focused on healing my group, I'm not even paying attention to the orb that just slowly rolled over the top of my body. Boss is literally at 15% health. I go down, Raquel follows shortly. It could be possible, but unfortunately, we do not end up killing the boss. So we do end up running it back. We get the boss to around 50% health. We have a minute 30 to go. And unfortunately, our Paladin in melee gets rolled over by an orb as well and goes down. And with that loss of DPS, we are unable to get the crystals destroyed, and they're going to go off and end up killing us. So that is the last key that I ended up doing live. But to finish out the week, I did run some other keys offline, not recording, and we ended out week 4 with a 3101 Mythic Plus score. And with all of our crests and upgrade to our gear, our item level's at 522 as well. So we made a ton of progress this week, and the 3101 is the highest Mythic Plus score that I have ever had, so that's a new personal record for me. And the highest key that we did time was that plus 15 Halls of Infusion that I did not get the footage for. Alright guys, thank you so much for tuning in and watching and keeping up with our challenge that we got going on right now. It's been pretty tough, and to be honest with you, from this point out, it's only going to get harder. And with that, enjoy the rest of your day. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and we will see you guys in the next one.